Have you ever thought about the power of your imagination? What if I told you that you could hold a baseball in your hand without actually having one? It sounds crazy, but hear me out. In this transcript, we explore the idea that all things are possible to the inner man, and that with the power of our imagination, we can create our own realities. Join me on this journey as we discover the mysteries of the inner self and the power of our thoughts to shape the world around us. I will explain it part by part. Let's begin. Same thing we do every night, Pinky, try to take over the world. So suppose now, this very moment, I wanted a ball, an ordinary baseball, but there is no baseball in the room. All night, but I want one. I would actually assume that I am holding a baseball in my hand until I can feel it. You think you can't feel it while outside, pride of seagulls. What it would be like if you held a baseball. Now to prove that you have held it, see what it feels like. The difference now, a tennis ball, silly difference. Like a golf ball, silly difference. A piece of silk, do you feel any difference? If you can distinguish between these many objects, though they are subjective, then there must exist somewhere. If you could actually separate them in your mind's eye and distinguish between these others, I can begin to feel, begin to think, begin to smell a rose. A rose doesn't smell or doesn't actually have the odor of another flower. I can detect the rose now, a lily, an Easter lily. I can detect that. For what does it do? Well, I'm going to get them. This describes the power of imagination and the ability to create sensory experiences in the mind. It suggests that by imagining the feeling and characteristics of different objects, we can distinguish between them and even sense them in our mind's eye. It also implies that through the power of imagination, we can achieve our desires and aspirations, just like the characters in the TV show Pinky and the Brain, who try to take over the world every night. Someone will think of Neville and send him a flower. Let's go be the flower that I'm going to actually feel, touch, and smell. It works that way. Money has an odor unlike any other in the world. It's most fragrant to the miser than the most marvelous perfume in the world. He can tell it. You put a money bag to his face, and it's like putting roses to mine. He loves it. He can smell money, conceal it. Money has a distinct feel about it. But take a $20 bill in your hand and ask you to feel it. Then put another piece of paper in your hand, and you can tell the difference. There's a difference. It has an odor to it. All this is part of the inner man, that all things are possible to it. Try it before you condemn it, right? Unless you have the evidence to support my claim, whether it doesn't matter what the world will get you if he laughed at you. So what? So the last of everyone who had an idea that seemed a little bit off center always laughed at the idea of going to the moon. Well, now it's accomplished. Spect. There are still those who won't believe it happens, because they don't want to believe that ever happened. There are those who said you couldn't go down and actually live underwater. Now we have a submarine. Just so those who won't believe it, you can present it with all the facts in the world. So this talks about the power of imagination and belief in making things possible. It mentions how money has a distinct odor and feel, and encourages people to try things before dismissing them. It also gives examples of ideas that were once thought impossible but have since been accomplished, and how some people still refuse to believe in them despite evidence. And they won't believe, so I tell you, you try it first, and it proves itself in performance. It doesn't really matter what the whole world thinks. Go about your father's business, which is yourself, and then live a full and wonderful life in this world of Caesar. And the day will come when you'll actually depart, as well, I mean this age, because those who are departing it now, unless they are awakened, they still find themselves in a world just like this. But those who have awakened will experience the second birth, to burst from above, find themselves in an entirely different age, where they're all imagination, and they are perfect. And wherever they go, everything is perfect. They don't have to raise a finger to make anything perfect because they are perfect. All things must conform to them for their feathers. That's heaven. So heaven is not an area, it's not a realm, it's a body. And when that body is awakened with imagination, which is the wonderful human imagination completely awake, then wherever you go, clothes in that body that is completely awake, everything is breathing. If you found yourself in a forest of dead trees, all burst into foliage in the desert, they would all blue like the rose. Because you are there no blind man, deaf man, no handicapped man could stand in. Your presence, he will be instantly transformed into a perfect man because you are perfect. So it describes the power of imagination and the idea that by awakening our inner self and imagination, we can create a perfect world for ourselves. The author argues that people should try to experience this state of being before dismissing the idea, as it has the potential to lead to a full and wonderful life. The passage also suggests that heaven is not a physical place, but rather a state of being where everything is perfect and conforms to the individual. That's heaven. It's harmony. So it's not a place where you go to pearly streets and all that nonsense. No, it's just simply you in a world that is perfect because you are perfect. And the day will come you will awaken that body within you. Now that body is easy, but it's sound asleep. One day you will experience the resurrection, and you'll know the mystery of the resurrection when you rise, and to rise within yourself. For the grave in which Christ is very as the Lord is very is your own skull. That's where he's buried. And in that tomb where is very one day he will awake, and you will come out of that tomb, and you comes out the two, and you'll know who you are. He is buried as easily child in the world, this universal being. And yet 1 billion of us, and yet only one Lord. And that one Lord in his fullness is buried in you individually, and when you awaken, you are new. So tonight, shake a girl, make it a lovely gold either for yourself or for another. But any time that you exercise your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you're mediating God to that other. So bring a friend before your mind's eye, representing to yourself as the man or the woman that you will like them to be, and don't tell them as for no praise. Just assume that they're talking to you and telling you the most novice views about themselves, and you congratulate them on that good news. I get your own way, believe in the reality of that imagine elect they may happen tomorrow. It may happen a day after, or a week later, or a month later. It has its own appointed hour, and it is writing, and it's going to flower. So don't be concerned. Leave it alone, and it will come to pass. So this is what I mean by feeling is the secret. So he is describing the power of the human imagination, and how it can be used to create a perfect world. They argue that the key to success is to focus on positive feelings and to imagine positive outcomes for yourself and others. They suggest that we should visualize the people in our lives as already having achieved their goals, and that this will help bring about those outcomes. The speaker also touches on the idea of resurrection, using it as a metaphor for the awakening of our own inner potential. I catch the mood, the feeling that will be mine if I will what I want to be. I don't touch something I can't if I want to, but it's to move. I'm speaking about what a feeling would be like if she were well, if she were this, and then you catch it just as it is true. You always go to the end, and the end is where you begin. We're always imagining ahead of our evidence, so go to the end until the end, and then we'll entertain even though reason denies it and your senses are denied. You've turned your back upon the doubters, that is your senses and what reason dictates. That's the hell or the devil or Satan in the world. That's the delta. So you turn your back upon it, and then you walk as though things were as you want them to be, and living in that assumption. It slowly hardens into fact, even though at the moment of the assumption it was denied by reason. An assumption, though thought is persisted in, will harden into fact. So you learn to assume and learn to persist in the assumption, and it will come to pass. And this is about the power of imagination, and how to use it to manifest what you desire in life. The author advises to catch the feeling or mood of the desired outcome, and persist in that assumption until it hardens into fact. It requires turning away from doubt and focusing on what you want as if it is already true. With persistence and belief, your assumptions will become reality. In conclusion, Neville encourages the power of imagination and how it can transform the world around us. It talks about the importance of trying things out before condemning them, and highlights the possibility of living in a perfect world where everything conforms to our perfection. The Neville also touches on the concept of the resurrection and how the universal being is buried in each individual, waiting to be awakened. The outro encourages readers to exercise their imagination lovingly on behalf of others, thus mediating God to them. So go ahead, imagine, and create a lovely world for yourself and others around you.